We welcome you to another Sunday School lesson. Sunday School is a blessing and gift from God. The best way to correct social and moral problems is to be willing to understand God's purpose, and fulfill it. This lesson is concerned with the issue of where knowledge begins. We cannot expect to gain wisdom without beginning at the right starting point. The book of Proverbs is a great resource for acquiring knowledge. It not only provides factual information to make us wise, but also directs us to the source of knowledge, God. The Hebrew word for Proverbs means comparisons, similitudes, or parables. We often use the term Proverbs to describe a short, concise, insightful expression of a particular truth or experience. It communicates practical, moral guidance in an effective way. When Solomon became king of Israel, the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Ask what I shall give thee." Solomon responded saying, "Give your servant an understanding heart." After God granted the request, Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the people of the East Country. Proverbs gives timeless principles regarding human character and conduct. Our first verse says, "The Proverbs of Solomon son of David, king of Israel." Solomon wrote the major portion of Proverbs around 950 BC. Chapters 30 and 31 are credited to Agur and Lemuel, respectively. Solomon succeeded his father David as king of the United Kingdom of Israel. We must learn to live prudent, honest lives while we are on earth, and the book of Proverbs helps us to do that, by teaching us how to live godly lives through wise thoughts and actions. Verse 2 says, "For gaining wisdom and instruction, for understanding words of insight." The term wisdom means having the ability to make skillful decisions in divine and human affairs because of past experience and training. Such ability comes only from a relationship with God gained by divine revelation, so that we may know both how to speak and act wisely, and to give instruction to others. These proverbs are designed to help us learn to be wise and to accept correction. The second purpose of the Proverbs is to help us discern and comprehend the words of understanding and insight. Verse 3 says, "For receiving instruction in prudent behavior, doing what is right and just and fair." A third purpose of the Proverbs is for those who are teachable, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment, and equity. First, the teachable person will take possession of intelligence and the ability to make skillful decisions. It is discernment. Second, the teachable person receives instructions in righteousness or right living. Third, the teachable person takes possession of instructions in lawful judgment, which definitely takes wisdom. It also refers to applying good reasoning to everyday situations. Fourth, the teachable person receives instructions in equity, which means treating people fairly. To neglect God's instruction results in spiritual immaturity among God's people. Verse 4 says, "For giving prudence to those who are simple, knowledge and discretion to the young." Solomon says that another purpose of the Proverbs is give the easily persuaded person the ability to make distinctions or discern between right and wrong decisions. The Proverbs are also designed to give the young man knowledge and discretion. Youth is the learning age that takes hold to instructions, is easily impressionable, and retains what is received. Therefore, the minds of young people must be seasoned well, and this can be done as they gain knowledge and discretion. Youth is rashful and inconsiderate, and therefore needs to be managed by the rules we find here in Solomon's Proverbs. Verses 5 to 6 are not part of our lesson, but in those verses Solomon says that those who are wise could become wiser by listening to these proverbs. They will gain understanding and learn to solve difficult problems. He added that his words will help them understand proverbs, stories with hidden meanings, words of the wise, and other difficult sayings. Verse 7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." This verse gives us the key for obtaining wisdom. Solomon said that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. To fear the Lord means that we are aware of God's mighty power and presence that leads us to want to constantly please Him in our attitudes and actions. Some people call this reverence for God and leads a person to think, act, and live in a right relationship with God. Fear is the foremost and necessary step to gaining knowledge. Simply put, the fear, or reverence, of the Lord, that is, worshipping Him and regarding Him as truly awesome, is the starting point and the preeminent part of knowledge. Solomon also said, "But fools despise wisdom and instruction." A fool is someone who lacks understanding, judgment, or common sense. Fools treat wisdom and corrective discipline with contempt. A fool laughs at sin, Proverbs 14:9, his ways are right in his own eyes, Proverbs 12:15, and he rejects instruction, Proverbs 15:5. Fools are so self-serving that they are not interested in submitting to God or His wisdom, Proverbs 1:29. The truth is, it's a waste of time trying to teach a fool, Proverbs 16:22, 27:22. Verse 8 says, "Listen, my son, to your father's instruction and do not forsake your mother's teaching." Those who are wise or seek to be wise regard their parents as their superiors. A person begins to gain knowledge by submitting not only to God but also to parents. Although Solomon seems to indicate that instruction or correction comes from thy father and the law or teaching comes from thy mother, they are both responsible for the child's training, for they are the instructors God has provided to lead children in His ways. Children are commanded to obey their parents and to value their instruction, Proverbs 6:20, Ephesians 6:1-2. Solomon also called on his son to forsake not the law of thy mother. The word law refers to rules that must never be forsaken. But rules are not to be the ends in themselves, rules should be used as teaching devices. Verse 10 says, "My son, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them." Solomon gives another general rule to young people to be aware of bad company. For sure, they will face peer pressure no matter where they are, at home or abroad. Peer pressure is nothing new, it has existed since the beginning of time. The company we keep can affect us positively or negatively. Solomon warns his son, sinners or unsaved folk, will seek to entice with flattery and good-sounding words to bring others along to sin with them. When sinners attempt to apply peer pressure to join in with their wickedness, Solomon cautions young people not to be seduced or taken in by them. Verses 11-19 are not part of our printed text, but in those verses, Solomon continues to delve into the ways people can be enticed to do wrong, including plots and schemes. No matter what things may look like, the object of these sinners is to hurt people even by murdering the innocent and taking whatever they could. In verse 15, Solomon again encourages his son to stay away from them. Verse 20 says, "Out in the open wisdom calls aloud, she raises her voice in the public square." Here, and in the next verse, wisdom is personified as a woman crying out the rules of wisdom. Wisdom cries out in the open, it's not hidden. God makes His wisdom available everywhere. Verse 21 says, "On top of the wall she cries out, at the city gate she makes her speech." Still speaking about the many places that wisdom could be heard, Solomon said that wisdom is heard in the noisy gathering place of society. In that day, it would be the open market or town square. Wisdom was also heard crying out in the entrance into the city where the elders carried on the business of the city. All over the city wisdom spoke as she uttered her words of instruction. Like Jesus, who himself is the wisdom of God, taught openly in the temple, in crowds of people, and said nothing in secret. Verse 22 says, "How long will you who are simple love your simple ways? How long will mockers delight in mockery and fools hate knowledge?" Solomon speaks to three groups of people who are normally unresponsive to God's wisdom. The first group addressed are people who are easily persuaded or deceived into doing the wrong thing. The second group are those who make fun of anything and anybody. They love to ridicule and find delight in mocking others and even mocking at the idea of submitting to the truths and laws of Christ, and to the reproofs and admonitions of His word. The third group is fools, or those who hate knowledge. They hate to be instructed and reformed, and have a deep hatred for serious godliness. Verses 23-31 are not part of our printed text, but in those verses wisdom continues to say to the simple ones and scorners that if they would turn and pay attention to her rebuke, she would pour out her spirit on them and make her words known to them. But because they refuse to listen and make fun of her counsel, wisdom would also laugh at them when disaster comes. Wisdom then said that when disaster falls on them, the simple ones and the scorners will seek her out but won't find her because they hated knowledge and didn't choose the fear of the Lord. As a result, they would be left to their own devices and suffer for their own ways they have chosen. The remainder of our text begins with verse 32. For the waywardness of the simple will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. The rejection of wisdom by the simple-minded has such an effect on their lives, that it could lead to their death. In addition, the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. Fools are content to follow their own foolish ways, being lifted up with pride, and attaching themselves to the world, which will ultimately destroy them. They are so proud that they turn away from God and not be bound by the restraints of His rules. But that very thing shall be detrimental to them. Our final verse says, "But whoever listens to me will live in safety and be at ease, without fear of harm." Safety and happiness are assured to all those who submit to the instructions of wisdom. First, wisdom says those who listen and follow after wisdom, they will live in safety because they chose not to go along with those who would do wrong. Second, wisdom said that the simple-minded and the fool who choose wisdom will be calm and have no disturbing apprehensions of danger. They will not only be safe from evil, they will not be nervous or overly concerned when people want to do them harm. If we seek God's wisdom, who is Jesus Christ, and always let His word rule us and be our counselor, then, we too will be able to dwell safely and be quiet from the fear of evil that's everywhere in this world. Key verse. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Proverbs 1:7. The word fear means to be afraid, but it also means to respect, hold someone in high esteem or regard. Respect for the Lord starts the learning process, understanding, and awareness. Only the foolish despise wisdom and learning. Often those who don't reverence the Lord don't know Him, and some don't know that He exists. It is foolish to live in this world and not try to get to know the Creator of this world. Thought to remember: fear the Lord and learn wisdom. Knowledge begins with God. The wise person listens to the wisdom that comes from God, and therefore, he exercises moral discernment and prudence by applying God's words. He is skillful in reasoning and resourceful in applying God's truth. That's true wisdom. When we choose to obey God's word, we're happy and safe. But, if we choose not to obey it, we'll make bad choices that lead to painful consequences. Our lesson next week is entitled, Value Wisdom. Our biblical reference is Proverbs 2:1-11. We are truly glad you spent time to learn this week's lesson with us. We hope you are blessed and may share these with somebody else. We wish you can join us at the Cubao Church of Christ soon. Our congregation is a place to discover faith, find new friends, grow closer relationship with Christ, and serve with each other's gifts. Thank you very much, have a great week, and God bless you always, dear brothers and sisters.